Welcome to a new
Hello.
conversation. Kirsten, I'm really
Hello.
happy to have you back and have this chance to exchange and explore now into another step. And we go explore also from the perception of EMCC. And I'm really happy that we have this chance to start also this series of conversations because I find it extremely valuable not only to stay and look and only at ICF, but also move into EMCC, and then maybe we can consider moving also into AC, Association for Coaches. Or
Yes, I think that would be very interesting. I just did a like a synopsis of AC, ICF, and EMCC, and it's very interesting to see that they're similar but sometimes different. So yeah, interesting.
fully with you, and I think that would be after we go through all of these three sets of competencies, standards, everyone names them however they want, coaching capabilities, at the end to just bring up the summary and say, and now this is how it all comes together, and for you as a coach, that's what you could take away. So that's the aim of the entire series that we're creating. And today we actually start with the first conversation around EMCC, core standards for individual coaching, number one, and that is called understanding self. From this perspective, what we would like to do today is not only just bring it up. Maybe some of the people that are watching this or they're going to be watching the recording, they don't know exactly what the core, what the standard says. So I think would be useful just to bring it up and make sure it's clear for everyone. So that would be the first element. Second element, I think would be extremely useful to look at this competencies from the perspective of once you do your evaluations, your reflective practice, and you want to link it back to the work that you're doing, how would that be transformed? How do you use that? How do you link that in your reflections? Because as you might know, or whoever else is watching and you're thinking, oh, so how would I get now accredited with EMCC? Well, with EMCC, it's not going to be like with ICF, with the recording and having an evaluation, a performance evaluation. With EMCC, you'll have to look through reflecting upon your work and your practice. So those are other competencies that you'll need to develop. Hence, would be wonderful to see how we bring that into that space. And I think the third layer that we should bring in our conversation is to create even more awareness around EMCC through the perception of those four levels of accreditation. And for each of the levels, so foundation, practitioner, senior practitioner, and master practitioner, at each level, you have capability indicators to show each of the standards. So that's what we'll be covering today, these three areas. And then if there's any questions, anything, just write them down, send them over, we'll pick them up. Kirsten, let's start with what's number one? How is it called? What is it all about?
So the first EMCC course standard is called Understanding Self. And the definition is demonstrates awareness of own values, beliefs, and behaviors, recognizes how these affect their practice, and uses this self-awareness to manage their effectiveness in meeting the client's and, where relevant, the sponsor's objective. And I think one thing that we need to say before we go into the more detailed description of what understanding self means is that EMCC has a different understanding of core standards or core competencies than ICF. EMCC operates with capability indicators, and not this very strict level of ACPCMC or foundation through senior practitioner or master practitioner, but has identified a couple of behaviors that may or may not be shown in each and every coaching conversation, but are things that you are generally able to do. And that's the difference between a competence and a capability. So capability is something that you are generally able to do that if appropriate, but it's not something you show all the time. For example, understanding self, would there be a possibility where your self-understanding is not so relevant in a coaching conversation? And I think there is. If you have a coaching conversation that is 100% about the client thinking about how they can get something done, there is very little understanding of yourself that you need. Maybe if you are a master procrastinator yourself and you have
Mm.
similar issues or something, then. But there are things like if somebody says, "How do I do this presentation?" where there is less or more use of this core standard. So there's a very interesting article by Tatiana Bakirova and a co-author whose name I forgot. So please, forgive me, around why capabilities are just much more useful for measuring coaching competences than, or measuring coaching performance than competences. So I invite you all to go and read that. It's a very, very fascinating one. So again, it's a core standards with different
Oi, Kirsten, slowly you're coming back. But I really love this difference that you've started making between competencies and capabilities. I think we'll all, until you're back, I think we'll all be curious to just make a note for ourselves and say, how do we look at that difference? And how do we, now thinking back at EMCC, how do we reflect upon that kind of difference? And
indicators.
now you are
And
back.
for
Now you are back.
simplicity's sake, we're just going to describe
Kirsten,
them.
now you're back. We lost you there for a bit. Oh, there's gonna be a bit of internet. This is Monday morning gremlins, huh? So until Kirsten's connection gets back on track, I think what I would encourage you to do talking about these differences is not just get stuck upon association wise, but just look at how can both sides of both capabilities and competences bring value to the way you're coaching and to the way you're supporting your clients. Because I think at the end of the day, like Kirsten was now trying to make the difference between those two elements, is around how am I growing and how am I adding value to the work that I'm doing. And it seems to me that each of the two associations, though, based on the elements that they've built into, so here at ICF Mentor Coaching, and that's why we looked at performance evaluation and talking about the core competencies. And now when we go now into EMCC and we look at these capabilities and then the indicators, and you will notice that the indicators differ depending on the level that you are aiming at. It's interesting to see how can I use this art of reflective practice and of course of supervision to bring even more towards how am I as a coach, what am I learning, and how am I developing the level of questions that I'm bringing, the level of reflection that I'm offering in a session to the client. And I think most importantly is also to make sure that we make also this distinction between, if you look at the ICF core competencies, you'll notice that they are very strongly around how we behave as a coach in a session. And at the same time, when I'm realizing, Michael, you're joining us. Wonderful. And thank you for that note about technology, how we can do that. I know who else we should bring on board on we're talking about technology and how can that support us even more. And I'm thinking now towards Rebecca Ruchman and Anke. So, but coming back, so now we were talking, saying ICF mentor coaching, that's how they build in this part of how can we show those competencies through recording and listening thing. Well, if you look at the EMCC and you think through the perspective of how would we be able to bring those, hi Kirsten, those capabilities at different level of indicators and how those indicators are evolving. I think that's also offering each of us as a practitioner, as a coach, a chance to reflect and notice how we are growing. So we'll go through, and I think Kirsten, you'll share also some of details of the indicators from foundation, for example, compared to the ones that are relevant for senior practitioner, master practitioner, and you'll see that they are being formed in offering you a space for growth. It's not something where you just say, I was able to ask for this kind of question, so I'm good. But they're looking also through the perspective of how do you develop yourself. So, Kirsten, now that you're back, we got a bit of a
I am so
gremlin in
sorry.
there. All good, all good. There's a also a nice comment from Michael, and Michael is with us. That's cool. And I was just bringing this difference, and I'll let you continue with the difference between competency and capability, because I think that's a useful reflection to take from this start of our conversation. So, floor is yours.
Yeah, it's like when you're reflecting on the capability indicators, it's really about throughout my practice, when am I showing this? What am I learning about this? And if we walk through the different capability indicators, you might be at the beginning of your
We have it again. Hell, I'm going to take a look into that Riverside FM to see how else. Well, we lost you again, but I took the point that you were trying now to start looking into. You said in there indicators and capability indicators. So now if we go now that we hear you, you're slowly getting back. So if we go back now to the competency and make sure that we first of all understand to the standard and understand what is it about. So the name of the standard is understanding self, and this is one of the elements that EMCC brings differently. They then just look at one coaching session, how you are as a coach throughout the session, but they also bring in how you are on a continuous flow throughout the entire process, how you are in your own practice. And that's why the first element is in there a lot around understanding self. You remember for sure when we spoke about ICF core competencies that there were a couple of elements in there. For example, in number 2, ICF core competency number 2, that coaching mindset, it was also a bit about us as a coach. Here is very clearly directed, and I'll just read it one more time until your connection stabilizes, Kirsten.
No, I'm
So
back.
you're back.
I think
Okay,
I'm back.
wonderful.
Yes, okay. So
Demonstrates
I
an
think
awareness of own values, beliefs, and behaviors. So I'll leave it to that, and I'll hope that you can pick it up, Kirsten.
yes, I hope I can too. I just wanted to mention that it is when you are at foundation level, it may be that you can also demonstrate or reflect on a capability at master practitioner. So it doesn't mean that you are at one level all the time. The differences are that capability indicators at foundation level are about um, behaving in a way, kind of basically behaving as a coach. And also communicating and knowing about my own values and beliefs and attitudes that guide my coaching practice and my mentoring practice. And behaving in alignment with my own values. So I know how to coach. I know what my own values are. And I know what happens when my clients' values are different from mine. So I am able to manage the diversity of different values in the different coaching, in the coaching session. So that means I am not thinking that my values are the right ones, that will be done or needs to be done. Um, but I am, but I am able to center my client in a way. Then, but that's foundation. Foundation is just the beginning level of coaching. As a practitioner, I am already able to identify, or at practitioner level, the capability indicator states that I'm able to identify when my own psychological processes are interfering with the client's behavior or with the client's with the client's work. And so I can adapt my behavior when I'm, for example, when I'm noticing that a client has a way of speaking that's irritating to me, that has nothing to do with the client, but it basically has to do with me, I can put that aside and focus on the client again. And as a practitioner, one of the capability indicators is also that I'm able to respond with empathy without getting sucked into the emotions of the client. So I can be a connected observer, keep centering the client and not center my own emotions. And I have an established model for reflection. So I know how to reflect on myself in the coaching sessions, and that's what I might work on at a practitioner level. And senior practitioner, it's not just kind of when it happens that there is interference, I respond professionally, but I also proactively manage my own emotions. So I take care that I'm in a good state to coach, and I've developed a reflective practice that enables me to coach. And I have the capability indicators states that uh, builds further self-understanding based on a range of theoretical models and structured input from external sources with rigorous reflection and experience and practice. So the higher I go, the more the capability indicators are about a proactive practice of putting myself in a good mindset and, well, mindset, if you know what, but putting myself in a good state, reflecting on myself and how I show up in coaching conversations. And um, at master practitioner level, then it says synthesizes insights derived from extensive exploration of theoretical model and personal evidence. So where at senior practitioner level, the capability indicators seem to align with one or two schools or approaches. At master practitioner, the capability indicators are often about I am able to look at different coaching approaches and I'm able to evaluate them critically and build my own. So know what I believe, why I believe that, and what is my basic philosophy of coaching, what is my basically philosophy of adult development, so that I really know where I stand on these things. Also, one of the capability indicators for understanding selves is critically reflects on practitioner paradigms. So at master practitioner level, I will have done a lot of reading and a lot of thinking about how do I conceptualize self, the coaching relationship, how the client grows, what I do in the coaching, how do I use myself and what do I do in the coaching conversation to enable client growth. And another one that I find is probably no one knows how to do that is reflects and has conscious access to every moment of their client interactions and coaching. I don't think that's possible because human memory just doesn't work that way. We don't have access to every moment of client interaction and coaching. But I think as a capability indicator, I could say I reflect on my coachings and I reflect on how I show up. I reflect on um, when I have a coaching session, how does it match with how I conceptualize coaching intellectually and academically, and how I, as a person, interact with the client and how I manage to center the client rather than my own emotions and thinking. So I think those would be um, ways to reflect on um, and when I'm writing the reflections for EMCC, I might just look at all these descriptions of the capability indicators and see, for example, if I take senior practitioner capability indicator, proactively manage its own state of being to suit the needs of the client. Then I might find a story of my practice. When was I too tired to coach? What did I do to deal with my tiredness? And in the reflection, I could then see what I learned about that. So sorry for the interruptions, but that's kind of what I have to say about it.
It happens. And I think as we are in a world that's constantly changing, allows us to actually continuously change this conversation, because I think we're learning from everything that we're bringing and this conversation. And I really appreciated this perspective of going through all of those in different indicators at different levels, and the example that you gave now with the competency of proactively manage own state, because I think that moment of how am I coming into a coaching session might be something that we sometimes forget to reflect upon. And it's something that we as coaches should keep it in the back of our mind, to be aware of what is it that is being triggered when we have a conversation with a coachee. So I think it's in both ways. How do we start the conversation, but what do we take? Because I don't think we're sitting in there as a coach and there's nothing being thrown at us from the client side and we go like, yo, no. I think there's plenty of elements that we're taking and allows us to create this space of reflecting and looking at how the elements that the MCC is bringing in the coaching community and the coaching space can actually make everyone as a better coach. So that was the journey through the first one, the understanding self. And I think what would be also interesting from this part of understanding self is to highlight that you're moving, like you said, from behaves in a manner that facilitates the mentoring or the coaching process. So facilitating, to looking at the last one and allowing a space for each practitioner, for each coach to say, where do I want to move next? What's my plus one? What kind of step I want to put in there to get to my plus one? So how do I find out at what EMCC level I might be? It's a good question. And I think my impression is that understanding self, as all of the other competences, it's a fluid thing. You might feel like for this particular one, for understanding self, you might feel like you're already a senior practitioner. For something else, you might feel like you're only a practitioner or even lower, because I think we're developing and it's not like everything grows in the same time, but you're slowly moving with through different stages. What are your thoughts on that one, Kirsten?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to just look at the course standards, EMCC course standards at the description, and then see where you would put yourself and reflect on that. And that should tell you at which level you are. And then there are some um, uh, like hard fact determiners, like how many hours do you have, etc., etc. But there is a document that tells you all of that, and that's the EMCC course standards document. And
Mhm.
as Michael is all participants in one of our trainings, we also have this document available in our learning management system, so you should be able to find it. And if not, ask your trainer; they have it.
Mm-hmm. Let me bring one more thing in there, because last week I went through the assessor training with EMCC, and there was an interesting element that I picked up from there, and that is, as anyone that's intending to go towards an EMCC accreditation, it's this part of matching or having a conversation around, having a space where you can look at everything that you've done, reflect upon how you are growing on each of those competencies, and together with a mentor, figure out what would be best suited for you. I really appreciated that part of not just ticking boxes, but having a conversation where you can define. So, well, how am I seeing myself? How am I being positioning myself, and from there emerging what would be the best level for you. So definitely do reach out to any of the trainers on that course who'll be able to provide you that, or send us an email, come to a meetup, book an info call with us. More than happy to do just that one-to-one. Cool. Thank you very much, Kirsten. I know that today was a bit longer, but to next week we'll meet and talk about, well, I would say it's going to be a mixture, because I know that we have a colleague of ours that wants to talk about a specific subject. And at the same time, we'll see how we include a bit of information around the course and that number 2 from EMCC side. If needed, we'll just create a space. The second one is commitment to self-development. So even more around us as a coach. Thank you so much. Enjoy the week. enjoy the information and enjoy the reflective space of difference between competency and capability. I really love that one. And do reach out. See you next week.
Bye.